So it is my pleasure to introduce a former colleague from what year BC was it, Guy?
Oh, fuck me. I think in 1984 I started at Ireland. So it was just have a think, because I always reference the bands. So for me, Frankie Goes to Hollywood was kind of a big part of that year, I think. And that craziness of that mad Irishman Dave Robinson, who was there for about 5 minutes.
I'll tell you for nothing. It was 1984. The Unforgettable Fire, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and
Yep.
Legend, because it was the biggest
Yeah.
year at the time Ireland had ever had. So I can
Yeah.
definitely confirm that for
It
you.
was it was a big year. And then I was, I was a kid. I was 20. Let me think about this. I was 22, I think. And I didn't really know much about the business side of things, but I think I knew a little bit about what sounded good. And that was always my thing. I was very lucky because I started at United Artists as the gopher, as a postboy when I was 17. I got expelled from school a couple of times. I think the more I have very bad dyslexia, so a school in those days didn't really understand what dyslexia was, so they just told me I was an idiot. And I was like, well, okay, if I'm an idiot, why am I here? There's better things to do with life. And so I started DJing when I was about 14, really. I built my own turntables as well, and was out DJing anywhere, anyone that would. I didn't even have to pay me. I just turn up and play records. And I was mad about funk and soul and some punk records as well. And I was just on an exploration journey. And so I very crazily, for something happened to me where I got in a fight. Last fight I was in, I was 17, some bloke picked on me and I hit him back. And I land up in Oxford Street, walking up and down Oxford Street, a bit depressed and a bit upset because I've hit this bloke and I don't, I'm not that kind of human being. And something overcame me, Tony. I had this sudden thing. I looked at Reed's employment agency and I had no fucking idea what went on in my head. I walked up the steps, walked up to this bloke behind a desk and said, I want a job in the music business. And he laughed at me. He just laughed. And then he said, oh, yeah. All right. So, how old are you? So I said 17. He said, how many? In those days, it was O levels, not GCSEs. He said, how many of those you got? I said 7. I didn't have any. I got kicked out before him. So then he says, okay, what's your phone number? I say, 014457598. What's your work number? 013687611. Because I was working as an apprentice mechanic at the time. Just left school because, I love cars. And didn't think anything while I left the place because he laughed at me and I thought, oh, nothing going to happen. And I didn't think about it. I really didn't think. And then 3 weeks later, he called me up. And he said, I've got you an interview at United Artists Records in Morton. They were in Morton Street at the time. And I thought, flipping out, Buzzcocks, Stranglers, wow, And so he said, but there's a problem. He said, they're looking for a 19 to 23-year-old. And I've told him you're 19. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's the second lie. How the fuck am I going to get away with that? So anyway, I get the interview and I get the second interview. And at the second interview, this lovely man, Mike Edwards, and he said to me, says, what do you think? And I said, well, I'm really sorry. And I'm trying to figure out which one of the lies I can get away with. And I figured the job involves driving. So they're going to see my driving license and they'll figure I'm only 17. So then I'm in trouble. So, and I thought, well, if they ask to see my O-level GCSE things, I can say I haven't got them. And that should buy me a month while I go and get new ones. And hopefully in the month, they might think I'm all right. So I stuck my hand up and went, actually, really, I'm really sorry, but I'm only 17. And he went, oh, you fooled me. I'll call you later, let you know if you got the job. And very luckily, he gave me a break. And I became the sales office assistant, which basically meant go for this, go for that, do this, do that. They gave me sales figures to do. I couldn't fucking add up if it hit me in the head. So it was brilliant. And in those days, we had a massive number of reps all over the country visiting chart return shops, which I'm sure you know about. Visiting chart return shops. So it was a fantastic learning curve about how sales worked, how sales forces worked, and how the basics of the industry worked. And then I've been doing that about a year, and I know, and at that point we'd been bought by EMI, and then all of the EMI sub-label or license labels, it was called LRD, Licensed Repertoire Division, were put into our part of the business. So they had Rack, Stax, Southall, Motown, Island. I could carry. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was fantastic. And so all these people suddenly arrived in our building. and we had all this massive, triple the number of releases going on. And there were the promo guys had to walk past my desk every morning to get where they were going. And I was an early bird. I'm always in at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. And these bastards were, I said, no, bastards, they were just lazy. They weren't getting in till 10:30 in the morning. And I kept looking at them and I thought, do you know what? I could do that job. I mean, I was 18. I was ignorant and stupid. And out of that ignorance, I thought, I could be a promotion man. And so I went to a lovely fella called Howard Berman, who was the marketing director. And he said, no. He said, never. He said, the average age of producers at Radio 1's 35, and you're 18. How are you going to talk to them? And I went, well, I'll just talk to them. And he went, no. You've got to wait a few years before this is going to happen. It's not going to happen. And I was like, oh, all right then. So then he told my boss, and my boss pulled me in and went, listen, we really like you. You're great, but give it a few years. Da, 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 da. Anyway, fast forward just literally a few weeks, and Rack Records was run by Mickey Most. Mm-hmm. And Dave Most, his brother, was a plugger and a really, really good one. And we're distributing a band called Hot Chocolate, and the record is No Doubt About It, which I'm sure you remember. And EMI Factory go on strike. So no bugger can get any records. Well, Mickey's an entrepreneur, a bit like Simon Cowell. He's going to run a business. And Mickey
who also works in the post room.
Exactly. He started in the post room. Exactly. So he converts Rack Studios into a warehouse. And I go over there with a couple of other people, Pat and Jackie, and we're packing records. And I mean tens of thousands of singles. I've got cobble cuts all over my hands because we're literally getting them in, reboxing them and sending them out to all the wholesalers. And we do this for a couple of weeks, and there's tens of thousands of records. And I think, if memory serves, the record goes to number 2 in the charts. And EMI then go back to work. And so Dave and Mickey and his brother Dave take us round to the pub to thank us. And I'm sitting there, and you imagine you're a kid at 18, and I'm sitting on my hands because I'm like sitting with God, and I'm not saying anything. And I'm like watching all these people going, I'm not normally quiet, as you can tell. And so Mickey comes to me and he says, no, I just want to say thank you. And he very sweetly gives me an envelope with a couple £100, which was a lot of money for me in those days.
Yeah.
And he says, and Dave, his brother, leans up and says, so what do you want to do? And I went, well, actually, I really want to be a plugger like you, Dave. And he went, oh, right, okay. Didn't think anything of it. Nothing. About 5 or 6 days later, Cliff, the managing director of UA, United Artists, calls me in the morning. I'm in the office bang early, and it's about 8:10, and he just calls my phone, and I pick up the phone, and he goes, Guy, it's Cliff, get your fucking ass up here now. And I thought, oh shit, I'm going to get fired. I've done something wrong. Da, 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 da. So I walk into his office thinking I'm going to get a bollocking. And he says, young man, you've got friends in high places. Mickey has called the chairman of Thorn EMI and said, I like this kid. You need to give him a job as a plugger. And that was my break.
That's brilliant. It's a shame it had to come to that, though, isn't it? Because I think from the story you told, it's like, there are these jobs aren't at job centres, so you can't really apply for them. I mean, my job, as we both know, our old friend Ray Cooper, it was in the Manchester Evening News, and it was a cock-up. It should have been in Music Week, but somebody put it in the local paper. So I applied for it. My thinking, Guy, was, I don't have a job in the music business. If I don't get it, I still don't have a job in the music business. But I went out for £25 a week for folk and jazz transatlantic to prove to Ray Cooper that was the best decision he ever made for giving me a job.
Brilliant.
That's all the motivation you need. And the thing is, what you do is it's a failing of the industry, because you don't just employ people who were executives here and executives there. No. Because when I went to school, I mean, it's funny because I brought a book out a year ago and I did a lot of interviews, and one of the guys said to me, because there's a story about meeting Led Zeppelin when I was 15, going backstage, and it got me to realize what it was like to meet your heroes. And this guy who was interviewing me said to me, what do you think that the music industry taught you that would have helped you as a 15-year-old meeting Led Zeppelin? I thought, well, that's a good question. That's a bit better than what's David Bowie like, So I thought, well, not as much as you think, John. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, when I was 6 or 7, I realized on the school playground I didn't want to hang out with this jerk who was a bully. And when I was in my teens discovering girls, I had to stand in front of them, ask them out, and fear rejection. So the same as you, right? I learned my communication skills on the street. We came. I interviewed Neil Story a while back, and he said to me,
"He's a lovely
classic.
man.
Yeah, it's a classic line. I came from a generation of people who made it up as we went along. That's who we are. That's who we are. I mean, all bullshit. These like courses that you learn. There are no two bands that are alike. No two labels are alike.
These courses, with all due kindness, are generally taught by people who've never had a fucking hit record.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's bullshit. You know, unless you've done it, unless you've proved you know that and you have enough taste to have hit records, you shouldn't be teaching other people how to do it. It's like you don't go to someone's got no money to ask them advice about how to make money.
Yes. I mean, I know you're full on with all the things that you're doing now, but do you ever have those moments where you sit back and it's not until a roller coaster ends that you really start to appreciate it? Because you're full on. I used to say to people, I was probably like £3 an hour, the amount of time I put in.
Do you know what? I thank my lucky stars very regularly. It's been just the thought of the people, interactions. You know, you work with us. You know, you saw what we did at Ireland and at EMI and the people. You know, you had good people, you had arseholes. It's life. You know, but none of it has ever been boring. You know, and none of it's ever been normal, and none of it's ever been 9 to 5. So thank you. You know, I grew up in suburbia. The curtains used to move with the neighbours when I walked home from school because they were bored out of their tiny fucking minds with nothing to do with life. You know, and I swore to myself, never. Just go and live and do something you love. Yeah. And we've been blessed. Yeah. And you know, that's it.
I said to people, it's like, you know, I ended up working with people whose records I'd bought as a kid. I bought Traffic albums in the 60s. I worked with Steve Winwood. I watched David Bowie split the Spiders from Mars. I'm out on the road on his Earthling tour, his publicist. That doesn't happen to a kid from the north of England.
No, exactly.
You know?
And that's the point.
But you know what you're saying is it's almost like we're echoing each other. The graciousness and humility to appreciate the opportunity that you had, that you grasped it. And I had endless rows with people, you know, who, you know, I'd sit in a meeting and they'd turn around and say, we see this as a regional record. I mean, what you're really saying is Radio 1 aren't playing it. Do you realise that the BBC is going to survive because of license money, and independent radio survives because of selling advertising? So you have to it's like, you know, I felt like saying at times, shut the fuck up. You haven't been north of the Watford Gap. Well, the Watford Gap as it was then. But, you know, I think the thing is that if you stand up, and the great thing is that working for a label like Island, you have that opportunity to develop yourself within an infrastructure of music people.
And you know, I got told off at EMI because United Artists got merged into EMI. And I used to go and hang out in the A&R department, and there was a wonderful man called Dave Ambrose and Perry Slater, and I got told off. I was like, "Well, why are you hanging out in the A&R department?" I'm like, "Well, it happens to be where the music's made, and that's why I'm here. You know, I'm here for the music. I'm not here for me. I'm here for if the music's good enough, I look clever." And it's really simple. And if I walk in to see you as a radio producer, and the music that I'm talking to you about is rubbish, I'm an idiot. So actually being in another department is right. But it was so bureaucratic at EMI at the time that people had these kind of silos of behaviour, which were just pathetic. And I think that came down fairly quickly. And I got a really lucky break. I had a lovely man I worked with, Bob, who let me loose, if you know what I mean. And then I was in that Christmas on the day after Boxing Day. And do you remember Radio 1 had a thing called Needle Time?
Yeah.
They had a thing called Needle Time. So they had to buy in 10 session tapes a week. And the session tape guaranteed you 20 plays over 2 weeks in daytime. Right? So you only needed 10 plays a week on Radio 1 of those days to break a record because they had 15 million audience. So I'm in the office and we had the flashing light phone system. And I'm in there, and I must have been the only person in the music business in the office on the day after Boxing Day that year, right? Literally must have been the only person. Because there was this lovely, lovely man who was a producer at Radio 1 called Paul Williams. And I see the light come up, and I flick it down, and I hear Paul, and he used to smoke quite a lot. So who's that? Who's that? It's Guy from here. Oh, Guy from here. Right, session tapes. Need session tapes. I need session tapes, and I need them now. And I'm like, okay. And I just read him the release schedule. And it's The Stranglers, Golden Brown, Kraftwerk, The Model, Thomas Dolby, and Talk. And so I sold him 4 session tapes. When everyone came back to work the following week, I looked like a hero.
Yeah.
All I'd done is pick up the phone. But the Stranglers went to number 2, Kraftwerk went to number 1. I think Thomas Dolby went to 34, and Talk Talk went in at 27 or something like that, if memory serves. It was a long time ago. I had 4 hits on my hands. I suddenly looked like I knew how to do the job. I mean, talk about lucky. You know, my first number 1 was picking up the phone.
I don't think it's, with respect, Guy, I don't think it's luck. I think it's seizing opportunities, you know. And kind of, you know, I used to say to people didn't play their records because they liked me. They listened to them because they respected me. And,
yes, absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
And the thing is, I think when you surround yourself with great people on other sides of the job, I think it brings the best out of you. Because I think, you know, it sounds really pretentious, but you'll understand because we go back a long time. But I feel that, like, if I'm working with the best, I'm the best that I can do, you know. And if you work with lesser mortals, you only have to do enough. And there's plenty of those in the music industry. I mean, I built some great relationships, like I'm sure you did, but there's also a bunch of like people who are just in it for the money, and nothing matters. They shit on you all the way and everything.
Yeah, but that's life. I mean, I just always stick to the piece that music's more important than we are.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if we stick to that, you'll never go a zillion miles wrong. And I've made some very commercial records, and obviously some very successful records, as well as ones that, you know, were good and bad taste and so on. And success is an opinion. You know, what your taste is different to mine. That's beauty. But I think it's always the band and the artist are the important people, not us.
Yeah.
I think that's really crucial. And as soon as your ego gets bigger than theirs, you got a problem. And yeah, you're right. I've seen that on a few occasions. But it has to be about the music. And I joined the music business for the music.
Yeah.
I joined it because I was crazy about music, and I still love my music. And I always will. So, I mean, I saw Elton play last night at Glastonbury. It was one of the best shows I've ever seen. I was in tears. I mean, the man was just on it. 2 hours went like in a minute. 2 hours went like literally in a minute. And he just was in it, and he loved the adoration, the songs, the way he played them, the went away. That man has had a life.
Yeah.
What a life. And it's there in the music. Yeah?
I think that resonates with an audience as well. I mean, it's very much the same as Springsteen. You know, when you see an artist on stage who doesn't have to do it, because certainly they don't need the money, and they're having a great time, that resonates with the audience, and they're just big daft smiles. You know, if you were on the stage looking at the crowd, they're having a ball.
There's an honesty to it. There's an integrity to it. And there's an integrity to great music that doesn't go away. You know, it's always going to be there. It's always going to be. Hang on, my dog's playing with this ball. Elvis, stop it. Thank you. He's called Elvis. I'm sorry.
Excellent.
Yeah, he's got a squeaky ball, and he seems he's not getting enough attention, so he wants to play. But anyway, there's an integrity to that, Tony. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me get that back. What did you? What did you do? There we go. I'll have enough of that. Thank you. Sorry, Tony.
Well, I finally found somebody who talks more than me. So what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to we will run out. So if you don't mind, I'll give you a quick buzz back in a bit. But
yeah, no.
I'll just roll on from this because, like I said, we need.
Yeah, sorry. Come here. Yes, thank you. Squeaky ball. There we go.
So
right, done. Sorry,
I think you've shared one of your moments that rock, Guy, your opportunity to get into the music business and your own kind of, you know, hustle, if you like. So tell us some moments that rocked your world.
Oh my God. Crikey.
I'll ask you something then. I'll ask you this.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about the Michael Jackson connection other than the fact that you looked after him for a while. How did that happen?
That didn't rock my world.
Oh, right. Okay.
That didn't rock my world.
I kind of understand that. Yeah. But tell us anyway.
I mean, you know, I was brought in to be chief executive of a joint venture. And then Michael came to me to ask me to manage him. And I stupidly said yes. And to be blunt, that was my ego being bigger than my brain. Because I knew it was the wrong thing to do. And
good for the CV, though.
Yeah, but not really, because I couldn't help him. He was too, you know, he wasn't in a good place, you know, and that's life. And you can only help people who want to be helped. Yeah.
It's. I kind of expected you to say something like that, because I don't know if you read Walter Yetnikov's book.
I did, yeah.
Do you see that thing where Michael Jackson comes to him after Thriller and says something like, "I want it to sell 3 times the amount," and Yetnikov said to Michael, "Go play with your monkeys," meaning like you're delusional. And I think the thing is, when you've got somebody like that is in another world, and obviously it had his issues and things, but so it wasn't like, how long did it last?
About a year, but it was painful, Tony.
Yeah.
It was painful because my entire career has been about helping artists to get somewhere. And as I sometimes say to people, making little shits famous. And I've been lucky enough to do that for some pretty phenomenal people. And when you're trying to, there's a phrase my dad uses: "Don't push shit uphill." Yeah.
I love it.
It was just one of those things, and I honestly regret doing it. I really do. It was a year of my life that I learned a lot, and there are lots of lessons in there. But the biggest one was don't help people that can't be helped. It's not clever.
That's great. I got a new series now. Moments that didn't rock my world.
Yeah, sorry. I think if I go back and I reflect on how lucky I was. When I just turned 19, and the EMI had signed a band for a bucket load of money, and I loved them. I thought they were extraordinary. And I was again told, no, you can't work on them. You're too young. You're not experienced enough. You haven't been out. And this is the biggest signing we've made in a long time. Blah, blah, blah. And I went and I nagged the head of A&R and Dave Ambrose, the A&R guy, and my boss and the managing director. I just nagged everyone. I was relentless. And eventually they went, okay, give it to the kid. Come on, let him do it. And it was Duran Duran. And thank you to Peter Powell, who was the DJ on Radio 1, who was really because I didn't know how to do the job, to be honest. I knew the music was fantastic, but I didn't really know how to do the job. But Peter Powell and I think it was Richard Skinner in the evening, if memory serves, a long time ago, were both huge fans. And so that made it really easy. And the records, Planet Earth was great. Girls on Film was great. Careless Memories, not so much. But those 2 singles alone, Planet Earth and Girls on Film, were phenomenal records. And that launched a career. And to be blunt, they're still friends. I don't have rock and roll friends. I'm not interested because to me, it's a moment in time I loved. And I've got very close friends that are in other worlds. But that was the kickoff for my career. That really, really helped me become confident about doing promotion. And because I knew if the music was good enough, that's your job. Yeah. Then you have to be, you did the job. You got to be super organized. Your word is your bond. If I shake your hand, it's done. Yeah. And then you become the default person that people go to when they've got a problem. So if you're doing a TV show and an artist falls off a TV show like The Tube or in those days Wogan or something, they'll call you straight away because they know you'll deliver.
Yeah.
You'll find a good artist and you'll get it there and they'll be on time. They'll be professional. They'll be there and they haven't got to worry. And that's the game. But also, you've got to have taste. You've got to have ears. And you can't teach that to someone, Tony. You either have the ability to listen to 10 bits of music and go, that one's the hit, or you don't. And that's the gift of the music business. And I didn't always get them all right, but luckily I got more wrong than I got right. Well, right than I got wrong. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So it's the piece, isn't it? And so the moment of rock would be Duran. That kicked my career into gear, really big time.
What I'll do, Guy, we got like 6 minutes, so instead of running out of tape and it just disappearing, I'll send you an invite now and we'll pick it up straight away. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Take 2 minutes, just download it, and then I'll send you the invite. Thank you, sir. I'll be back.
Okay, I'll be back.